Thank you for listening to PT Podcast with Eric at PT National. So every week we invite our Facebook users to upload questions regarding all things health and fitness, and I will be answering those questions, and over time I will get a collection of people together, other health professionals and friends in the industry, and we will go through them and even discover new insights and where we're going in all things in the fitness industry. So one of the first questions that was posted, which I think is a really good one, from Naomi Blythe, it's regarding why does an ACL rehabilitation take 12 months? So the anterior cruciate ligament, quite commonly injured in a lot of sports that you change in direction, your football, your soccers, those type of sports. It's pretty much a 12-month rehab program now for an ACL. Gone are the days where you can try and fast track the process. I think it's accepted in the industry now that an ACL is 12 months out of action. Just like, for example, an Achilles rupture would be 2 years out of action. And these are the things that the general populations and I think athletes are accepting, that there is a full rehabilitation program that you must follow. So with the ACL, if you're having the hamstring tendon graft, so basically they're taking a portion of your hamstring tendon, and the hamstring itself is then going to replace the ACL or the anterior cruciate ligament. And it is a ligament that must be reconstructed. You must do an ACL. If you have a PCL or a posterior cruciate ligament, you can live without it. It sort of is not that crucial. But with an ACL, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And what happens to the actual tendon itself? It goes through a metamorphosis process, and it eventually dies off, and it becomes a ligament in itself. Now, where we get a little bit mistaken is that we think after 6 months everything's going to be fine and you can go and return back to sport because it feels very strong. Now, during this process, it's actually quite misleading, and you must remember when it feels its strongest point around that 6 month period, that's when you have to be most careful. That's its most crucial point. Between 6 and 9 months, it's going to go through the major changes of that metamorphosis, and that's when it's actually at its strongest, but literally then going to be at its weakest, and you have a false sense of security with that ligament. So if you are that person who has experienced or gone through the ACL reconstruction, please be careful around that period of time. And that's why they believe it is pretty much a 12-month recovery, because of that metamorphosis, that last phase. And that's where most re-injuries take place, and something to be careful about. Lisa Chapman just posted a really good question regarding intermittent dieting. What is it, and does it work for everyone? Now, this is a really good question because I myself actually have modified my diet over many, many years from a bodybuilding type of regime where you're consuming 6 to 8 meals per day, up to 4,000 to 5,000 calories, depending on whether you're in a loading phase or not. And you now come across these other diets that come along, such as the 5-2 diet. Now, the 5-2 diet is really a polished version of the intermittent fasting. And there was a really good documentary that came out last year regarding that from BBC in the UK. And then it all started from there. Now, intermittent fasting is an interesting situation because it really depends on the person or the client themselves. And when I say this, it depends on what your goals are, as you know, with any nutritional plan or any particular diet. And it can be quite an extreme form of dieting. Now, when we are looking at foods, we need to look at things such as whole foods rather than, the whole idea of proteins, carbs and fats and all those little sort of macronutrients. Sometimes it's good to look at food in terms of color, in terms of what do I need food for. Now, over the years, when you go from a bodybuilding perspective to one based on just for health and fitness and getting through your day and getting the most out of your day, your diet changes dramatically, okay? So it's not really much about muscle mass anymore. Now, regarding the 5-2 diet, it is great for people who want to get the most out of their day. Okay, in the instance that I'm going to consume the same amount of calories that I usually consume in my day between a shorter time bracket. Okay, now there are a lot of psychosomatic things that come out with these intermittent fasting diets. For example, self-discipline, okay, to be able to handle food only within a certain time period. Also, it's like a reward mechanism. So, for example, one way that I do my fasting is that I eat between 12 midday through to 11 o'clock that evening, okay? So I have that time bracket in which I consume all my food. And then pretty much from 11 o'clock onwards until 12 o'clock the next day, I will be fasting. Okay. Now, the reason why I eat till 11 o'clock that evening is because I want to wake up feeling full. Okay, so this is where it's all about personal preference, and it depends on your day. Now, my day starts very early, as you know, as a personal trainer, so I do not want to wake up hungry. Now, the other thing that's really good about the intermittent fasting is the whole idea about distraction. Now, I know you asked about the diet itself, but I want to allude to the fact that regarding nutrition, there is a psychological approach to nutrition. And that's really important to understand, especially to achieve long-term success with any nutritional plan that you choose to adopt. Now, I know there is a lot of information out there, and you have to be very careful with the information that is out there. Okay, so when you ask this question, I have to be very conscious as to what I suppose I can disclose, but at the same time, give you a good general understanding of what to consider when you are deciding, when you're doing a search on the net, or whether you're asking people, or whether you choose to go with your gut feeling as to what you think you should do. So, one thing that's important is understanding generally how many calories you need to consume. Now, that's your basal metabolic rate. Okay, so if you jump on any online search and you type in your BMR calculator or your basal metabolic rate calculator, now you put in your height, your age, your weight, and it also will ask how much activity you will do in your given day. Then from there, it will tell you how many calories you yourself, okay, Lisa Chapman, burns in a given day. Now, from that, okay, now that's in calories. So you've got to understand that's a different SI unit to kilojoules that we use in Australia. So you need to just make sure that you may need to times it by 4, generally 4.2 if you want to go into details. Otherwise, most calculators are in calories anyway, okay? But you can do different metric calculators as well if you wanted to know the Australian version, okay? So you can work off kilojoules. So once you work out your amount of calories for your given day, and let's say for a female, it may be 2,200 calories, okay? And you can then work out, all right, within my given day, I might split that up into 4 meals, okay? And then from there, you'll work out exactly how many calories you want each meal. Now, these are the things that I would address with a client who is trying to understand intermittent fasting. Now, the flip side to this is that research shows that it is very successful for males. Okay, it doesn't really affect their testosterone levels, and it can actually enhance their testosterone levels. Now, with women on the flip side, there are more considerations, okay, regarding your age and where you are in your hormonal cycles and so on. So I don't really recommend intermittent fasting or 5-2 diets for females. Now, that is my own personal, professional opinion. Okay, so there are conflicting, evidence out there, but with my clientele, I don't request that, or I don't recommend. Rather than for a female, I will go for general lifestyle, nice, healthy foods throughout a given day to make sure that your blood sugar levels are maintained through that day, okay? Because they do affect mood as well, and it can affect your hormonal levels as well, okay? And there are a lot of variables. Once again, I always return to the word variables. There's so many things that can be taking place, okay? But one thing I definitely have learned, so going from 8 meals a day to a fasted state, okay, is that it teaches you a lot about self-discipline. Can you go through a given day with a limited amount of food? And the answer is yes. I think sometimes we look at food through our eyes rather than through our needs. And one thing that is great about intermittent fasting is it allows you to be distracted. So it allows you to focus on your day, on your given task, and don't focus on food. Because really, throughout our day, we always think, what are we going to eat for breakfast? What are we going to eat for lunch? What will we eat for dinner? And what am I going to snack in between? But really, do you need to do that? When you wake up your day, try and go for a fasted state. Now, there are mixed research regarding that. Should you wake up and have breakfast? Okay, there are mixed different emotions regarding all that. So it's very difficult to give you a straight out answer because, of course, it is a general statement, and also you are female. So, I have different mixed opinions regarding these intermittent fasting diets for females, as I just said. So in hindsight, it is great because it teaches you more about nutrition from an emotional perspective rather than nutrition itself. Okay, and that's one thing that's very important for exercise professionals and fitness professionals to be aware of. Food is not just about food, it's the emotional association you give to food. And fasting teaches you to not always think about food. Now, it will take a couple of weeks before you develop those patterns, okay? Just like muscle memory, just like anything we do in life, it will take a little bit of time to develop the discipline to say, hey, I'm going to start my day and just have a glass of water. Now, at first hand, you think, wow, I don't think I can do that. For the majority of my life, I've woken up and had breakfast, okay? But it does teach you a lot about I can get through a given day with no food. And the great thing about it, think about in the situation is in that you may be at work and you had a deadline to meet and you were so much under pressure that you didn't have time to eat. Now, really, you still performed a day where you probably burnt more calories in that day because you were under pressure, but you didn't consume any food and you were perfectly fine. So that gives you an idea, intermittent fasting. Change your perspective to the way you look at food. Okay, try and minimize the amount of food within a given time span. Okay, but the other thing, the reason why it's called 5-2 is because 2 times throughout that week, that given week, you must fast. Okay, now what we tend to recommend is that a client should either have one meal only of 450 calories or thereabouts in that day, or if they want to eat throughout the day, they would eat chicken noodle soup. So they still get enough salts throughout that day to keep them, afloat. But it is a very demanding diet, those 2 days of fasting. However, you will feel very healthy. It is great for, chronic diseases and things to just flush out the body and try and clean out the body. So there are some great things about these diets. But once again, nutrition is personalized. And I highly recommend that you do get assistance either from an Australian practicing dietitian or a sports dietitian or even your GP who can direct you in a different direction or a trained nutritionist as well. We received another very good question from Raman, and that's regarding, should I disclose my medications to my fitness trainer? And if you notice in the new training package that's taking place in the fitness industry, from Certificate 3 all the way through to diploma, there is a major push towards fitness professionals and exercise professionals working with allied health and also working with medical practitioners. So, Raman, it's vital that you disclose that medical information. However, I've been in the industry for a very long time and I know that develops trust. And once that trust is developed between the client and the trainer, it is then that the client starts to disclose a lot more than just they wanting to lose weight or build muscle mass and so on. So the answer is yes, should you disclose? Every personal trainer should conduct a adult pre-exercise screening questionnaire with you prior to you conducting any form of exercise program, let alone physical activity with the trainer. And in that, they will ask you, have you or do you take medication? So as part of your history. So the answer is yes. I would definitely encourage clients to disclose this information, but at the same time, I'm a realist and I understand that trust must be established prior to that first. Sarah Johnson asks a very good question. The world seems saturated with PTs at the moment. What are your thoughts about this? So obviously, Sarah, you would like a personal opinion of this. Now, that's a difficult one because I've been in the industry for 20 years and I love what I do, and I'm a personal trainer in that as well. And I regard myself more as an exercise professional or specialist. So there are some levels regarding personal trainers. And also, yes, there are a lot in the market, but it depends on the person themselves. If you're a person that is within the fitness sector or you go to a gym regularly, you're going to see a lot of personal trainers. However, I do meet clients that have never been to a trainer. They've never understood what it is the role of a personal trainer. So there is a large population of people still within Australia, let alone the rest of the world, that still have no access to a personal trainer. For a lot of people, a personal trainer is still a luxury item. So that is something to consider as well. But for a lot of other clients, it's actually a needs-based situation where they may be in their 40s and 50s, early 60s, and their children have gotten a bit older and now they're independent, and their GP has said to them, I think it's time you focused on yourself because it's borderline. So this is the world that I see in terms of rehabilitation and also more chronic diseases and things like that. So the world, is it saturated? Well, there are still a lot of people that are interested in personal training and personal training courses. I think it's a twofold. By me being within the fitness industry, I too have lived a healthier lifestyle myself, and therefore my family live a healthier lifestyle. So I think it's a bit twofold. So if I am in the industry and there is a lot of people that are, I think it makes a better society as a whole, but also personally, each individual trainer lives a healthier lifestyle because we like to think that we practice what we preach on a major scale. I would like to look up what the research says about the numbers of personal trainers. The numbers have increased over time. That's a definite, but the percentage is that according to a research study by Deloitte, the 2010 to 2020 research regarding the fitness industry and where everything's going, the majority of personal trainers are within that 34, 35 age bracket, believe it or not. You would have thought it would have been much younger because you look at a lot of advertising campaigns, but anything from around 25 to 35, you're going to see a high majority of personal trainers. But you'll see that we've got an aging population. So you're going to see that actually increase in numbers. So you may see a larger saturated within a certain demographic, but I think what we're going to see in the future is a larger range of demographics to hit different target audiences. So it's not going to be so saturated within one market, but rather a global market in that. And you'll see a lot more 45-year-old personal trainers entering into the market as a change in career or as a further to their interest in what they do, maybe as a side job or a job on top of that, because of the aging populations. So it's a very good question. It's one that it's quite a biased question because I can only talk from my perspective, and I love this industry and I love what I do. I personally don't think it's saturated because I see the number of students coming through the doors and they're just looking at new gaps and new markets, and I find that quite interesting. So within particular markets, when I first got into the industry, I thought my ideal clientele was going to be 25-year-olds that are healthy and fit, and they just want to continue what they're doing. Whereas I didn't realize it was just an inevitable thing that because of my background and my knowledge, my target audience were 45 and up, and it was more from a rehab perspective. Now, I know for sure that is not a saturated market. That's actually in need of market. And I do encourage a lot of students, a lot of learners to go down that path if it's something that they enjoy. And like I said, just to finish off, you're going to see a lot more 45-year-olds and up entering into the market to hit that, the older pops demographic. So hopefully I answered your question and it wasn't too personally biased. Thanks.